Hey guys, tonight we drift softly into the shadowed corridors of medieval life, where peculiar rules whispered through the ages like mist over ancient moors. These were not whims of idle kings, but quiet guardians born from the raw necessities of a world lit only by flickering hearthfire and distant stars. Like, subscribe if you enjoy these gentle journeys through time. Comment where you're listening from and what time it is there. Settle in as we explore the weird medieval rules that existed for really good reasons, letting their stories cradle you into peaceful slumber. First, picture the soft thud of inflated pigs' bladders against cobblestones. The distant shouts fading into evening fog. In medieval villages, football or mob football, as it was known, swept through streets like a wild river. Teams from rival parishes kicking a leather-bound bladder the length of entire towns. Goals sometimes miles apart under the watchful moon. Players punched, tripped, and barreled into one another, bones cracking amid the chaos, blood staining the earth where grass once grew. It was no gentle pastime. Deaths came from crushed skulls or trampled limbs. Fields turned to muddied battlegrounds by dawn. Kings like Edward III, gazing from tower windows in 1349, saw not sport but Parallel England ravaged by the Black Death. Its men felled by plague while French wars loomed like gathering storms. Healthy archers were needed, bows strung taut against invasion, not bruised bodies chasing bladders. Thus, the ban fell softly. No more football, on pain of imprisonment. Lest idle games steal the realm's last defenders, the rule lingered through centuries. Echoed in Scotland by James I, who fined players 50 shillings, the weight of a labourer's yearly toil. Imagine the village lads, breath fogging in crisp autumn air, hiding their bladders in haylofts, whispering defiance under thatched roofs where smoke curled lazily from peat fires. Yet it held, for good reason archery laws followed, mandating Sunday bow practice, strings humming like distant harps. Without such edicts, England's longbows might have faltered at Crecy or Agincourt, arrows falling short in the rain-soaked fields. The ban preserved muscle and focus, turning rowdy youths into yeomen whose volleys darkened the sky. In quiet taverns, elders nodded approval, tankards clinking softly, knowing chaos yielded to order when survival whispered loudest. Summers passed with gains suppressed, energies bent to ploughs and forges, the realm steadier for it. Even as crackers, those pointed shoes lengthened on noble feet. Football's shadow rule ensured fields echoed with harvest songs, not brawls. Daily life wove tighter under this veil. Parish boundaries, marked by ancient oaks now scarred from stray kicks, stood as silent sentinels. Mothers mended sons' gashes by candlelight, lanolin salves smelling of sheep and herbs, murmuring prayers for peace. Bakers, eyeing the empty streets, sold loaves untrampled, their crusts golden in iron ovens. The rule, odd to our eyes, breathed practicality, fewer broken tools from stomping feet. Fewer feuds boiling into vendettas that scorched barns under harvest moons. Chroniclers like Froissart noted the calm, villages dozing undisturbed, dogs curling by hearths without midnight howls from lost games. It worked, somehow, this gentle prohibition, as fields greened anew and plagues receded like ebbing tides. Shadows lengthened over forgotten pitches, grass reclaiming what frenzy once claimed. But that leads us gently to the forests, where trees whispered secrets older than stone, and rules carved deeper than axe marks. Forest laws draped England's wild woods like cloaks of green, decreed by kings like William the Conqueror, who claimed all deer, boar, and game as royal shadow. No peasant could hunt, not even a starving hind poaching rabbit amid famine's grip, lest they disturb the king's beasts, those graceful shapes gliding through mist-shrouded glades. At dawn, punishments flowed cold, fines heavier than winter frost, hands severed for startling a doe, eyes blinded for felling oak to feed a fire. One chronicle tells of a man hanged for 3 rabbits, his body swaying from gibbet as crows call softly in the branches. Why such severity? Forests were not mere woods, but royal coffers, timber for castles, hides for armor, venison for feasts that bound nobles in loyalty. Without them, sieges crumbled, crowns toppled like autumn leaves. Envision the vert, that ancient term for green cover, patrolled by agisters on palfreys, their horns lowing warnings through fern-choked paths. Peasants skirted edges, boughs hidden beneath cloaks damp with dew, hearts pounding at rustle of undergrowth. Superstitions bloomed here, poachers blamed woodland spirits. Willow, the wisps luring them to nooses. Yet the law endured for preservation. Overhunt and game vanished. Famine's bony fingers clutching tighter. Special forest courts sat under yew trees, verdicts sealed by air justices, their parchments crackling like dry leaves. A hind's lament survives in records, a widow, child starved, fined for snares. Her tears watered the soil where her man once walked. But reason prevailed. Royal forests sustained armies, from Hastings to Bosworth. Arrows fletched from sacred groves. Deeper still, the smells damp earth, rotting mast, the metallic tang of blood from lawful hunts. Foresters marked trees with king's arrow, black paint stark against bark. A quiet claim amid birdsong. Villagers learned caution, traps disguised as windfalls. Whispers of black market venison traded for salt. It seemed harsh, this rule binding nature's bounty. Yet it balanced greed against endurance. Chronicles from Henry II's reign detail Ayre's sweeping regions. Fines funding bridges over swollen rivers. Somehow, it held the wild at bay, ensuring oaks stood tall for shipyards. Deer multiplied for future tables. As fog rolled through hollows, the law stood sentinel, a weird weave of protection in a hungry world. Leaves fell softly, year upon year, under its watchful boughs. As the sun dipped lower, casting amber through lattice panes, another rule emerged from the steam of kitchens, the assize of bread and ale. A quiet decree adjusting loaves to wheat's whim. Bakers scaled farthing loaves by grain price. 12 pence per quarter meant 6 pounds of white. Fluffy as fresh snow, crust shattering under careful knives. Rise to 20 shillings, and weight dwindle to ounces. Crumbs measured like whispered oaths. Ale too, priced firm. Foamy heads in pewter mugs at taverns where firelight danced on timber beams. Why? Bakers cheated in scarcity, shrinking loaves unseen, bellies rumbling while purses fattened. Riots brewed in markets, pitchforks glinting under angry sons' Coventry's men petitioned Henry III, pleading for scales etched in law. Inspectors prowled, the scales with rods testing density, noses sniffing for short-weight deceit, punishment, the bakester's pillory, neck in wood, tomatoes splattering like summer rain, crowds murmuring below. Anecdotes linger. One London baker, caught light, ducked in horse trough till repentance bubbled forth. Sensory-tide yeast rising warm in dawn ovens, mill wheels groaning by streams, flour dust veiling air like ghosts. It curbed gluttony, ensured fairness when plagues halved harvests. Nobles dined secure, peasants portioned true. No empty husks fooling the scale. The assize spanned centuries, till steam engines puffed it away. But in medieval hearths, it steadied hands against famine's edge. Daily rhythms bent to it. Millers ground by lantern glow, sacks heavy on mule backs over rutted lanes. Wives bartered, eyes sharp on balances. Children nibbling crusts by cottage doors where hollyhocks nodded. Subtle humor in chronicles bakers' joking loaves shrank from shame. Yet it worked. Markets calm as sleeping rivers. From Dover to Durham, the rule whispered equity, loaves true as monkish vows. Somehow, amid rat-gnawed granaries, it fed the realm. From those steady loaves, our path winds softly to the sumptuary laws. Silken threads binding cloth to status in halls, where candle wax dripped like slow tears. Across Europe, from England's Edward III to Italy's city fathers, decrees forbade peasants fur-trimmed cloaks or velvet gowns, merchants shunning gold chains that nobles alone might wear. A labourer in fine scarlet, pilloried, fabric stripped amid market jeers, the wool smelling of fresh dye and regret. Why such weave of restriction? Class blurred in prosperity's glow-wool trade boomed. Merchants waxed rich as lords, aping their silks at banquets, where lutes hummed low. Kings feared. Unrest. Peasants dressed high sparked envy, scythes turning to swords in flickering torchlight. Imagine Bologna's 1400 edict, read from town criers' bells. No woman under 50 in silk unless wed to wealth, lest harlots mimic ladies in moonlit alleys. Francis Philip IV tallied fabric sermon for dukes, rabbit for knights finds funding wars against. English longbows, anecdotes whisper, a Flemish dyer, caught gilding common hose. Laboured chain-ganged, hammer clangs echoing his folly. Sensory hush looms clacking in candlelit cottages, wool carded by oiled fingers. Markets ripe with lavender-dyed linens denied the poor. It preserved hierarchy. Nobles distinct at jousts, their brocade shimmering while churls huddled in russet, earth-toned as ploughed fields. Without it, revolts like the jackery might have swept unchecked, pitchforks storming gated manors, daily life draped in obedience, tailors measured by rank, needles pricking parchment lists. Whispers of black market velvets in dockside shadows. Superstitions clung fine cloth invited evil. Amulets of jet tucked into hems. Yet reason ruled. Economies steadied. Trade guilds thrived under clear bounds. No merchant bankrupt chasing noble sheen. Chronicles from Burgundy's court note feasts where status shone clear. Alliances sealed sans confusion. It held, this fabric fence, through peasant uprisings, annual famines, cloaks marking place as surely as crests on shields. Threads pulled tight, society endured. But that leads us gently to the curfew bell, its toll rolling like evening mist over thatched roofs. signaling fires banked low in iron cages from Norman conquest. William decreed at dusk, embers covered, half smoke curling faint as forgotten prayers. On pain of house burning or blinding, villages fell silent, shutters creaking shut. Only owls calling through star-pricked skies. Why? Wooden towns, tinder dry in summer gales, blazed from stray sparks London's 12-12 inferno devoured for 100 souls. Bridges buckling into Thames' dark flow. Conquest's wake brought wooden holes cheek to jowl with hayricks. One gust away from pyre. Picture the bellman, lantern swaying, voice soft through fog. Lights out, fires out, forges dimmed, bread ovens cooled to ash grey, families huddling under woolens by dying glows. Punishments etched fear, eyes gouged for repeaters, gibbets creaking by dawn. Anecdotes survivor York Baker, embers loose, watched his home curl black. Neighbors hauling water from wells that tasted of iron. Smells lingered, charred thatch sharp as. Loss, do damp streets muddied under bare feet. It saved realms, visceral fires contained, nights for rest, not frantic buckets clanging. Cities grew safer, stone replacing timber slowly, as curfews told salvation. Rhythms deepened with it. Children banked peats with hooked irons, clink clink echoing like lullabies. Mothers spinning by final flickers. Superstitions bloomed in covered fires, called half-witches, salt circles warding flames. Yet practicality prevailed, fewer widows weeping over ruins, guilds rebuilding swifter. Froissart's pages hint at calm streets patrolled by watchmen, boots soft on cobbles. Somehow, amid wooden fragility, it shielded sleep itself. Bells faded into night, guardians unseen, as shadows pooled in forest glens. Another rule stirred the vert and venison preserve, where even picking sticks invited lash. William's Domesday tallied woods as crowned men. Peasants barred from fallen boughs or stray pigs rooting mast. Lest king's dear hunger, fines crushed like frost, a widow's cart for one oak twig. Goal for boar snare. Chronicles whisper of heirs under hornbeam, justices in green cloaks dooming poachers to pillory. Faces pilloried with rotten eels from mere streams. Why? Forests fueled conquest timber for Hastings ships. Gain for armies marching long leagues. Deplete them, and fleets rotted. Knights starved on barren campaigns. Envision agisters riding dawn paths, horns bugling verdicts. Hounds baying at trespass. Peasants skirted forest assaults, cleared illegally, plows idle by dread. Sensory veil pine resin thick, leaf mold squelching under furtive steps. Venison roasting distant at chases. Anecdotes endure. Henry II's great hunt. Peasants locked indoors as stags thundered past cottage. Walls, horns winding triumph. It balanced realms' needs, commoners herding swine in designated pannage seasons. Acorns crunching golden, revolt brewed Robin Hood tales born here. Arrows whispering defiance, but law endured. Woods verdant for shipwrights at Portsmouth. Life wove cautious, charcoal burners smoked pits by. Leave, vapors brew in hollows. Tradesmen haggling permissions in Boothals. Superstitions guarded, green men's spirits patrolled, moss men luring cutters to bogs. Practicalities shown, sustainable yield, no barren wastes. Crowns funded by vert fines bridging swollen fords. Somehow, in hunger's shadow. It sustained. Leaves whispered on, eternal. From those verdant vales, our whispers turn to the ritual of hand-washing. Basins steaming softly in great halls, where lords gathered like moths to taper light. Across Christendom, from Byzantine courts to planogenic banquets, ewers poured rosewater over fingers slick with grease, linen towels scented of lavender drying noble palms before meat carved from silver platters. Common folk mimicked in hovels, ditch water murky from rain barrels. Hands scrubbed before trenchers of salt fish and peas pottage. No casual wiping on thighs or cloaks, this rule decreed ablutions. First, lest filth breed miasma in crowded solar air. Why? Plague stalked unwashed hands. Black Death's spectre born not just from rats, but grubby digits passing trenchers. Breaths mingling hot over shared cups. Hygiene veiled as courtesy. Elites wielding ewers as scepters of purity, distancing from peasants' soil-crusted nails. Imagine the squires, boys with downy cheeks, pouring scented streams over chain-mailed gauntlets. Droplets pattering like summer rain on flagstones worn smooth by generations. Chroniclers like Joinville, scribe to Louis IX, detail crusader camps where hand basins circled fires, priests intoning graces amid lather of soft soap from olive and ash, punishments for slovenliness whispered soft, knights shunned at high tables, trenches untouched till penance rinsed away disdain, sensory hush water warm as mother's milk, rose petals floating bruised and fragrant, towels rough-hewn from flax fields swaying gold under harvest moons. It curbed disease's creep, bowels spared from flux that felled armies mid-march, castles standing firm when foes wasted in tents. Daily tides flowed cleaner. Monks in scriptoria dipped quills post-prayers. Ink safe from greasy smears blotting vellum illuminations. Market wives scoured palms before coin. Exchanges, silver glinting untainted. Superstitions wove in unwashed hands invited sun's touch. Devils clinging like burrs to palms. Yet reason gleamed. Physicians like Gilbertus noted fewer ags where basins ruled. Humors balanced by ritual flow. In Avignon palaces, popes hosted cardinals with golden ewers. Streams symbolizing grace amid schism storms. Somehow, amid chamber pots emptied into streets, it shielded the quick from death's quiet siege. Droplets evaporated softly, purity lingering. But that leads us gently to the biphasic sleep. Night's first hush broken by awaking our under-vigilant stars. Hearths crackling low as families rose to pray or whisper. From Chaucer's Pilgrims to Italian diaries, medieval folk slumbered first sleep till midnight, then stirred for 2 or 3 hours before second sleep cradled dawn. No unbroken 8 hours this rhythm decreed by candle economics and winter dark. Lamps trimmed frugal lest tallow melt fortunes. Why? Candles cost dear, beeswax rare as virtue. 1 wick burned through eve to morn left hovels black as pitch, wolves howling unchecked at doors. The gap allowed fires banked safe, prayers to saints for night's perils past. Picture the hush, wallens drawn tight, breaths sinsing in lofts where straw rustled faint. Then stirring husbands mending nets by embers, wives brewing possets of ale and herbs. Sense of fennel curling sweet, chroniclers evoke it tenderly. Roger Eckert's studies unearth, court records, Kings plotting in that witching interlude, lovers coupling soft as shadows merged. Children recited paternosters, voices piping like distant flutes. Superstitions guarding fairies danced then, iron pokers by beds repelling changelings. Sensory embrace, chill air nipping noses, wool blankets heavy as earth, hearth glow painting faces amber. It aligned with sun's tyranny. Bodies rested yet alert for matins, bells tolling vesper's end. Life pulsed in dual cadences, artisans planned by gaplight. Chisels tapping lute soft on half-finished reliquaries. Taverns opened midnight doors for dreaming ale. Foam spilling warm down throats parched from slumber. Practicality shone, fewer half-fires. Raged untended, minds fresh for labor as cocks crew second time. Through plagues and famines, this rule sustained vigilance. No souls lost to endless dark. As hearths died to ash grey, sleep reclaimed, rhythmic as tides, stars wheeled on. Eternal watchers, as embers cooled to whispers, another custom ironed itself into law the horseshoe nailed above. Doors curved downward like crescent moons cradling luck over lintels scarred by centuries' smoke. From Saxon thatch to Norman keeps, blacksmiths forged U-shapes hot. Hammers ringing hymns on anvils glowing cherry red, hung to ward elves and ill winds. No casual placement, nails driven from legend of Dunstan, devil-shoeing saint whose pincers twisted infernal hooves. Irons touch burning fiends to flight. Why such fixation? Iron, earth's blood drawn from bogs, repels spirits in a world where fairies stole babes. Witches soured milk overnight practical shield against unseen woes that blighted crops. Curdled ale, withered limbs unexplained. Envision the farrier, sweat-beading brows in forged stink of charcoal and flux, quenching shoes in hospice troughs hissing steam, then mounting ladders to tap them firm over portals, where breezes sighed soft. Anecdotes endure, a Glastonbury tale of Dunstan snaring Satan in. Horseshoe grip, the fiend fleeing with cloven prints etched in rock still damp from dew. Sensory forge, metal tang sharp as blood, nails cold biting palms. Thresholds warmed by memory's glow. Econ fears, villagers nodding at shoes glinting rust-red. Fewer midnight shrieks from elf-shot cattle. Superstition's practical psychic bomb when leeches. Failed fevered brows. Rhythms bent to it. Brides carried irons at weddings. Knots tied with heated rings sealing vows. Blacksmiths prospered, anvils thumping steady as heartbeats. Reason veiled magic. Irons gleam deterred thieves eyeing dark porches. Symbols binding community faith. Through crusades, horseshoes guarded homes sans men. Luck proven when barns stood full. Somehow, in superstition's mist, it steadied souls. Nails held fast, year upon shadowed year. From Iron's quiet vigil above doorways, our evening meanders to the haunting chime of runaway bells. Those bronze tongues silenced by law lest they wander fields calling ghosts under harvest moons. In medieval France and England, curfew edicts bound bells not just two towers, but leashes any clapper fleeing its belfry by storm. Or thief faced royal seizure, melted down like traitors' bones. Chronicles from 13th century Paris whisper of bells run away in gales, rolling to village greens where peasants rang them wild, summoning spirits or signaling revolt. Why the clamp? Unmoored peals mimicked alarms, stirring mobs to arms or ferries to frolic in walled towns. One false toll could bolt gates shut, trapping folk in plague-strewn streets, while foes scaled walls unseen. Picture the sexton, ladder creaking under dawn mist, nails rasping as he lashed clappers firm, bronze cool and heavy as sin. Storms howled off Atlantic swells, towers shuddering like ships in squall, bells tumbling then hunts, dogs baying through dew-laced meadows. Finders find unless turned to bailiffs. Anecdotes linger soft. Older Manbury's bell, 1280 for fugitive, recaptured with psalms. Its voice hushed till requiem mass, sensory toll, metal warmed by palms, ropes frayed from poles, echoes fading like sighs into fog-wreathed veils. It quelled panic. False alarms quelled like embers, villages sleeping deep sans spectral summons. Superstitions served since spells warded thunder, but loose ones invited lightning's kiss or devil's choir. Life chimed ordered. Clockmakers forged chains, matins and vespers punctual as heartbeats. Thieves eyed bells for melt silver, gibbets claiming the bold. Practicality rang true. No bred riots from phantom calls. Monarchs secure from whispers in bronze. Through 100 Years' War, towers stood sentinel, bells bound fast, somehow amid tempests. It harmonized chaos, peals drifted peaceful, eternal. But that leads us gently to the shadowed decree. On women's shoes, those poulaines stretched to phallic folly, points curling to feet long like dragon tails over cobbled lanes. Edward III's 1360s edict clipped noble toes to 6 inches, commoners half, lest follies trip wearers into ditches or spark sodomy's sin. Courts glittered with cracos, velvet points, bells tinkling, soft, but kings saw peril riders unseated, knights stumbling in tourneys, fields fouled by drags in mud. Why curb such vanity? Armor clanked heavy, pointed toes snagged spurs, unhorsing chivalry mid-charge. Peasants, mocking lords, aped styles, blurring ranks in mummeries that brewed unrest. Envision cordwainers, alls piercing leather stiff as sin, stuffing toes with moss and wool to hold grotesque curves. Smells of tannin pits rank as tannery bile. Chronicles mock. Froissart notes Frenchmen tripping at Agincourt. Arrows finding sprawled fools. Punishments whispered. Shoes hacked off in markets. Feet bared to jeers. Fines padding exchequers. Sensory stride. Bells jingling faint. Points scraping stone like nails on slate. Ankles raw from bells' weight. It steadied armies, knights mounting swift sands tangle. Battles won by balance. Superstitions curled long toes lured lust demons. Crosses sewn in souls for ward. Rhythms stepped measured. Tailors wedged stilts for dance. Minuets graceful sands sprawl. Reason ruled folly. Fewer fractures from falls, economies spared cobblers' whims. Through fashion's flux, edicts clipped excess, feet firm as faith, paths stretched straight, unhindered. As cobble echoes fade, hygiene's hush descends on chamber pots. Those earthen voids decreed to streets at dawn, not flung from casements mid-noon. From 14th century London ordinances to Paris constables, rules timed empties to wagon rattles before markets woke. Less filth splash nobles' mantles or breed miasma in sun-baked alleys. Why such schedule? towns crammed tight, Roundseas champing gutters, children playing where waist-pooled ankle-deep dysenteries brew, fluxes claiming infants like silent reapers, windows barred casual dumps, cries of Gardy Lou, fading under edict's grip. Imagine the maid, pot sloshing warm in pre-dawn chill, clogs splashing to carts where drivers hawked night soil. In gravel tones, loads hauled to fields greening Thames meadows. Chroniclers detail finds, a fishwife's midden flung early, pilloried with bucket overhead, stench clinging days, sensory sluice, urine sharp as nettles, feces soft and yielding, streets steaming under first sun. It cleansed commons, pests fled cleaner ways, plagues slowed their creep, superstitions veiled, pots held souls, dawn dumps freed ghosts harmless, life flowed tidia, gossips huddled post-empty, breaths fogging shared secrets, fields bloomed richer, turnips swelling fat from London lees, practical bomb, fewer epidemics sweeping wards, apprentices hail for looms. Somehow, amid squalor, it purified. Wagons rumbled on, renewing. From waste's retreat, our trail softens to the ale tasters. Those guild solemn men sampling foam in taverns dim as monkish cells. Rods probing strength per a size decree. Brewers scaled ale to barley's breath-cheap grain. Full pints, dearth, thin draughts priced fair. Why such sip? Fraud foamed rife. Waterlogged brews fleecing throats. Bellies bloated sans cheer riots from sour cups. Blades drawn over weak head. Tasters, cloaked official, spat verdicts. Good ale. Thumbs up, bad. Casks smashed. Tavern shuttered. Picture the guild hall. Tasters circling barrels charred oak scent. Ladles dipping golden rills. Noses flaring hops and malt symphony. Anecdotes bubble. One Eli taster, poisoned by spite, wretched publicly, brewer ducked in own vat. Sensory sup, foam creamy on tongues, bitterness lingering like regret, barrels groaning deep. It ensured equity, peasants quaffing true measure, nobles toasting safe, superstition's stirred ale held spirits. Tasters warded by crosses etched in staves, taverns thrived judged. Wives brewed cautious, yeast bubbling hearthside pots. Reason fermented, no famines from false fill, guilds prosperous, through harvests lean. It steadied cheer, mugs clinked honest, enduring. With honest mugs drained to lees, our evening glides toward the spectral hush of silent night snow brawling. No dice rattling like bones after curfew's toll. As decreed in village leets from Kent to Cumberland, justices of the peace, parchments furled underarms, patrolled with lanterns swaying like fireflies, dispersing knots of revelers whose shouts pierced thatch roofs thin as parchment. Fists unclenched by lantern glow, dice scooped into purses damp with sweat, on pain of stocks or scourge. Why bind tongues and tempers post-dusk? Streets narrow as veins brimmed with watchmen few. One phrase spilling to arson or blade work under moons indifferent gaze widows multiplied. Orphans keened in empty cots where fathers fell. Envision the alehouse door creaking reluctant, watchmen's staff tapping cobbles like slow heartbeat. Voices hushing to murmurs as pipes dimmed to embers. Chroniclers like Paston letters evoke it. A Norfolk brawl hushed by beadle. Dice players find a penny each, clinking into poor boxes carved with saints' solemn eyes. Sensory retreat. Breath ale sour in chill air, fists unballing stiff. Stocks would splinter rough on ankles come morn. It cradled peace. Families slumbering sans door kicks splintering oak. Dawn markets bustling unbloodied. Superstitions murmured noisy nights called demons to dance. Crosses chalked hasty on lintels for ward. Life quieted compliant. Bards strummed softer after vespers, ballads fading like mist. Reason held firm. Fewer feuds festering to vendettas scorching barns. Constables spared dawn patrols weary. Through war's echoes, villages rested whole. Somehow, silence stitched safety. Stars gleamed undisturbed, watchful. But that leads us gently to the loom of widows' weeds. Black veils mandated for a year post-grave. Lest hasty remarriage stain honor like spilled ink on vellum. From canon law's grip to manorial rolls, widows draped somber. No colors bright till morning's term told, guardians eyeing hems for errant scarlet. Inheritance tangled sands it widows remarrying swift snatched lands from heirs. Uncles scheming with suitors silver-tongued. Why shroud grief so long? Lineages frayed in infant mortality's shadow. A widow's hand held manners key. Delay ensured wards matured. Oh, the sworn true without gold chasers haste. Picture the seamstress, needle-pricking black bombast heavy as sorrow. Veils smelling of dye pits, and tears dried. Draped over shoulders bowed by spade work at fresh mounds. Anecdotes whisper, Eleanor Reikener's tale, widow veiled yet wandering York streets. Fined for forbidden frippery, sensory weight. Wool itchy on necks. Mirrors fogged from half-damps. Solitude echoing in empty solar chairs. It preserved estates. Boys knighted on sire's acres unpilfered. Realms stable sands scramble. Superstitions clung colors cold spirits jealous. Black warded wandering souls. Rhythms mourned measured. Gossips noted hem's length. Knots tied symbolic at year's eve. Practicality endured. Fewer. Bastard claims clouding titles. Courts unclogged. Through plague's widow's harvest. It anchored bloodlines. Veils lifted slow, revealing. As veils thinned to twilight, the hush of no peeking window sides decreed shutters tight. No prying eyes ogling neighbors' candlelit suppers through oiled parchment panes. London assizes. Bound casements. Glaziers nailing firm lest voyeurs spark duels, or witches' curses winged on glances stolen. Why curtain sights? Towns pressed intimate. One squint birthing rumors scolding as brands adulteries whisper kindling pyres. Feuds from glimpsed kisses in alcoves dim. Privacy's fragile veil, birthed by crowding. Imagine the carpenter, mallet thudding soft. Shutters oak barred smelling fresh sawn. Latches clicking like tongues stilled. Records hint, a Shrewsbury wife, peeking find, stood stocks with eyes blindfolded by mob's mercy. Sensory seal, wood grain cool under palms, draughts whizzing faint past seals. Hearth warmth trapped intimate. It quelled malice, beds unspied. Trusts woven tighter, superstitions served open panes let imps peer. Salt dashed thresholds nightly. Life peered inward. Families clustered close. Tales spun by Foreglo private. Reason blinded envy. Fewer blades drawn dawn tools. Harmony hummed low. Amid walls thin. It fostered peace. Shutters clicked shut, serene. From sealed sights, our path softens to the yeoman's bow mandate. Every able man drilling strings taut Sundays, lest French sails speckle Channel haze unround. Statutes from Henry V onward strung arms weekly, butts raised village greens where shafts whistled true. No idling with slings or football bows alone, you limbs bending supple. Why compulsion? Agincourt's hail turned tides, without practiced yeomen. Invasion's washed shores bloodied. Picture the green, dew damp, lads drawing to earlobe, twang humming like harp, fathers nodding grave. Fines bit, non-archers pilloried, bows seized, sensory arc. You resin sticky, strings hemp bite on fingers, targets straw-stuffed thudding shafts home. It armed realms. Peasants' night sands mail, volleys veiling foes, superstitions strung arrows, blessed saints' names carved, warding misflight. Fields paused for flight, gills supplied fletchers, feathers swan down soft. Practicality pierced, battles won cheap, crowns endured. Bows bent faithful, shafts soared straight, enduring. Shadows lengthen now over these medieval whispers. Rules woven from necessity's quiet thread, football curbed for archers' hail. Forests guarded for fleets afloat. Loaves weighed true against famine's gnaw. We've wandered these shadowed paths tonight. From curfew bells tolling hush to horseshoes warding unseen foes. Each oddity a cradle for survival in a world of wood and whim. Forests breathed, hearths banked safe, hierarchies held by cloth's humble hem. Like, subscribe for more drifts into history's gentle arms. Comment your favorite rule or where dusk finds you now. Rest easy as ancient rules fade like mist at first light, carrying you into dreams deep and undisturbed. Hey guys, tonight we drift softly into the shadowed world of medieval times, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, and the days unfold in a rhythm as slow and unyielding as the turning of the seasons. Imagine yourself there not as a king or a knight, but as an ordinary soul, caught in the quiet weave of life 500 years ago, a life where every breath carried the weight of survival, and the sun's arc dictated not just light, but fate itself. Like, subscribe if you enjoy these gentle journeys through time, and comment below where you're listening from, and what time it is there. Settle in now, let your eyelids grow heavy, as we explore why you wouldn't last a day in those forgotten times. Breathe deeply, and let the whispers of history lull you into peace. First, picture waking to the forgotten art of the medieval dawn. That fragile moment when the world stirs from night's embrace. No gentle alarm chimes or warm coffee to greet you, oh no. In a typical village, say in 14th century England, your day begins with the rooster's hesitant crow, muffled by the thatched roof of your waterland daub hut. The walls, woven from mud-smeared branches, seep chill moisture even in summer, and the floor is packed earth, strewn with rushes that haven't been changed in months. They crunch softly underfoot, releasing a faint, sour tang of decay mingled with the sharper reek of livestock huddled nearby. Cows low faintly in the corner, their warm breath fogging the air, while fleas leap in silent welcome from the straw pallet you call a bed. You rise, stiff-limbed, into a darkness pierced only by the glow of a single tallow candle made from rendered animal fat, its flames sputtering yellow and greasy. filling the room with acrid smoke that stings your eyes and coats your throat. No electric lights, no matches. You fumble for flint and steel, striking sparks that dance like fleeting fireflies before igniting a twist of rushlight. By now, the household stirs perhaps your wife or children, their faces pale in the gloom, coughing from the perpetual haze. Breakfast? A scrap of coarse barley bread, baked yesterday in a communal oven, its crust as hard as old leather. You dip it in weak ale, the only safe drink, for water from the village well often carries the invisible curse of dysentery, that silent thief of strength. But hygiene, that's the true awakener of woes. No running water, no soap as we know it. You splash your face from a wooden bucket filled from the stream, where upstream villagers wash clothes, bathe, and empty chamber pots. The water runs brown, flecked with bits of refuse, and its chill bites like winter's teeth. Teeth cleaning, a twig frayed at the end, rubbed with salt or urine, yes, urine, collected in pots and aged for its ammonia bite, believed to purify. Chroniclers like the monk Orderic Vitalis noted in his ecclesiastical history how nobles prized their morning ablutions. Yet for peasants, it was a hasty wipe with a rag that doubled as a towel for the whole family. Now, step outside into the yard, where the mud sucks at your subaltern's leather shoes stuffed with straw, prone to rotting after a single rain. The privy, a simple hole in the ground, screened by a rickety fence, buzzing with flies that feast on the pit below. Privacy is a luxury. Often, it's out in the open fields, squatting amid nettles while pigs root nearby. And the smells, the layered symphony of manure, rotting vegetables, and open sewers trickling through the streets. In towns like medieval London, the great ditch called the Fleet River carried everything from tannery waste to butcher's offal. Its waters thick as porridge, breeding miasmas that physicians blamed for the bad air of plagues. Yet somehow, they endured. Superstitions wove through it all, touched the doorpost for luck before venturing out, or whisper a prayer to St. Fiacre, patron of gardeners and hemorrhoids afflictions all too common from straining over inadequate pits. A quaint tale from the Paston Letters, correspondence of a 15th century Norfolk family, recounts a servant who refused to use the latrine at night, fearing demons in the dark, and instead soiled the rushes indoors. They thought charms of herbs hung over the door would ward off evil spirits. Somehow, it gave comfort amid the filth. As you trudge to the fields, the weight settles. No paved roads, just rutted tracks ankle-deep in slurry, where horse dung steams in the morning mist. Your back aches already from last night's sleep on a sack of chaff, and parasites itch beneath your woolen tunic, lice that multiply unchecked, without hot baths or pesticides. By midday, you've barely begun, but dehydration looms. Ale is your hydration, fermented weekly at 1–2% alcohol, sipped from a leather jack that never quite washes clean. This dawn ritual, repeated endlessly, broke stronger souls than yours. Froissart's chronicles describe peasants collapsing from exhaustion before noon, their bodies unaccustomed to the grind. You, modern and soft, would falter here, overwhelmed by the damp, the stench, the unrelenting grit. But that leads us gently to the next veil, the labor of the fields. where the sun climbs and sweat mingles with soil. Next, imagine the backbreaking toil of medieval agriculture. That eternal dance with the earth under a sky that brooks no mercy. Dawn has yielded to morning light, filtering through haze, as you yoke yourself to the plow. No tractor's hum. It's you, an ox if you're fortunate, or sheer muscle if not. The ard, a wooden plowshare tipped with iron rare, and precious cuts grudging furrows through heavy clay soil. Each step sinks into the muck, pulling with a force that wrenches your shoulders, the harness chafing raw against collarbones. Hours pass in this rhythm. Push, strain, turn, repeat. Blisters form, burst, and harden into calluses that peasants wore like badges. But for you, they'd be agony by the third pass. The fields stretch in open strips, part of the three-field system mandated by manorial courts. 1/3 fallow, resting to regain meager fertility, the rest sown with rye or oats. Hardy grains that tolerate poor soil, but yield little. Harvest a peril in itself. With a sickle-curved blade dulled by constant use you hack at stalks, binding sheaves with straw ties. The Anglo-Saxon chronicle laments famines when rains turned fields to quagmires, as in 1315. When the great famine claimed thousands, you'd swing that sickle, arms burning, while rats and birds pilfered the crop, and thunderheads gathered, promising hail that could shred weeks of work. Women joined too, weeding with short-handled hoes that forced constant bending, spines curving prematurely, children as young as 5 gleamed straps, their small hands pricked bloody, meals in the field, pottage, a thin stew of peas, beans, and whatever greens the Lord allowed boiled over a smoky fire in a clay pot. It simmers with a woodsy aroma, but tastes of earth and desperation, leavened only by wild garlic foraged from the hedgerows. Seasons dictated torment, spring planting amid mud that clung like clay greaves, summer haymaking under a sun that blistered unprotected skin, autumn harvest races against frost, with flails threshing grain on barn floors alive, with chaff that lodged in lungs, causing farmers lung as described by later physicians. Winter, mending tools by rushlight, or delving manure into fields, the stench clinging to hair and clothes for days. Quirky facts pepper the drudgery. In medieval France, as chronicled by Jean Froissart, villagers believed ploughing on St. Valentine's Day ensured fertile fields, invoking Cupid for crops, a superstition born of desperation. They'd scatter blessed seeds, chanting softly, as if words could coax bounty from barren loam. And taxes, the Lord's boon work, 3 days unpaid labor weekly, hauling his harvest while your own rotted. Disease lurked here too, ergot from damp rye poisoned limbs with gangrene, St. Anthony's fire, hallucinations twisting minds before flesh blackened. You feel the first tingle, panic rising, knowing monasteries offer dubious cures of wine and prayer. Somehow, communities persisted. Songs hummed lowly to ease the ache, ballads of lost loves mirroring the land's harsh embrace. By noon, sweat soaks your smock, salt-stinging eyes, and hunger gnaws deeper than any modern fast. No breaks beyond a hunk of cheese, riddled with mites that crunch between teeth. Your modern body, pampered by ergonomics and nutrition, rebels, muscles cramp, Vision blurs from dehydration despite the ale. Peasants endured because there was no choice, their lives a testament to quiet resilience. But a single day would leave you broken, yearning for respite that never comes. As the sun climbs higher, casting long shadows over the furrows, that leads us gently to the midday meal and the perils of sustenance in a world where every bite was a gamble. Next, as the sun hangs at its zenith, a pale orb veiled in dust motes, you pause for the midday meal, that sparse ritual of sustenance amid the whispering fields. No bustling kitchen or microwave hums. Instead, you huddle under a lone oak, its branches sighing in the breeze, sharing a wooden trencher passed hand to hand. The pottage cools quickly in the clay bowl, a murky broth of leeks. Cabbage hearts scavenged from the Lord's garden edge, and barley grains swollen but tough. It steams faintly, carrying the earthy musk of turned soil and the faint bitterness of wild herbs, foraged at dawn. Before the dew burned off, you sup it with a horn spoon, worn smooth by generations, while bread dark rye loaf, dense as peat crumbles into the mix, its yeasty tang masking the mold just beneath the crust. Ale flows from a shared jug, frothy and warm, its malty warmth the only comfort against the gnawing void in your belly. Meat, a rarity for peasants, perhaps a sliver of salted pork fat on feast days, or bacon ends boiled into the pot. Chroniclers like the 13th century Matthew Paris in his Chronica Majora described famines, where folk ate nettles and bark, their mouths raw, bellies swollen with famine edema. You'd chew slowly, the fibers catching in teeth unbrushed since yesterday's urine rag, wondering if the twinge in your gut is hunger or the stirrings of flux. Around you, the field hands murmur lowly tales of last year's harvest, when locusts stripped the oats bare, leaving only chaff for the winnowing. Superstitions flavor the talk. Avoid eating facing west, lest the fire steal your strength, or sprinkle salt thrice over the meal, to ward off elves. In Scandinavian sagas, like the Icelandic Flete Jarbok, farmers invoked Thor with hammered oatcakes before reaping, believing thunder god's hammer kept blight at bay. Somehow, these whispers sustained them, turning drudgery into myth. But digestion brings its own shadows. No proper latrines in the fields. You slip behind a hedge, squatting amid thorns that snag your hose, the earth soft and yielding beneath. Fly some lazuli, drawn to the warmth, and you wipe with a dock leaf, its sap soothing yet sticky. Back home, supper mirrors this. More pottage, perhaps thickened with acorns ground fine after leaching their tannins in streams. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, peat and twigs sending spirals of blue smoke up a hole in the roof, coating lungs with soot that peasants coughed up lifelong, black phlegm staining rags. Nutrition faltered eternally. Vitamin deficiencies bent spines rickets from lack of sun and dairy. Scurvy gnawing gums in winter when cabbages froze. You'd feel the weakness seep in. Limbs heavy as lead, while they adapted, their blood thick with resilience. A story from the Anglo-Norman poet Wace's Roman deed brute tells of peasants boiling grass in sieges, surviving on visions and will. For you, this meal would mock your modern palate, spoiled by variety and hygiene, leaving nausea where they found fuel. Yet, as the sun dips lower, gilding the stubble with amber, That leads us gently to the hearth and home, where evening gathers like a soft mist, revealing the fragility of shelter in medieval nights. Now, envision the return to your dwelling as twilight weaves purple threads through the hedgerows, the air cooling to carry scents of damp thatch and distant baking. Your hut clusters with others in the village toft, a low-slung affair of wattle walls daubed in clay, roofed with straw that sags under pigeon nests. Smoke curls lazily from the roof hole, the only vent, drawing eyes skyward where stars prick the velvet dark. You duck through the low door, lintel brushing hair, into a single room 12 feet square, floor rush-strewn and gritty, harboring mice that skitter at your step. The hearth dominates. A central fire pit ringed by stones, flames licking an iron tripod, if you own one, else a stick tripod over embers. Supper simmers there, the same pottage recycled, augmented with cheese from the ewer's scant milk, rind tough and blue-veined. Family circles close, children on stools whittled from branches, elders on benches, all in wool kirtles stiff with lanolin grease. The air thickens with smoke, eyes watering, throats raw. No chimney means haze layers like fog, breeding coughs that echo through winters. Lighting fades as tallow dips gutter, their mutton fat wicks sputtering black smoke, casting wavering shadows that dance like uneasy spirits. No books or lamps. Tales unfold orally, grandmother recounting the Black Death of 1348. When pits yawned for the unshriven, bodies stacked like cordwood, their buboes oozing under moonlight. You'd listen, chilled, as superstitions bloom. Hang rowan crosses over the door to bind witches, or strew lavender for purity, its faint floral note lost in the reek. Bugs claim the night. Fleas from the livestock pen leap aboard, biting relentlessly, lice nest in seams, demanding nitpicking by firelight, fingers parting hair to crush the eggs with thumbnails. Bedbugs swell from cracks, their bites itching through sleep. A 14th century treatise by the Surgeon Guy de Chauliac details infestations plaguing even monasteries, monks scratching psalms amid vermin sieges. You toss on the pallid straw mattress over planks, shared with kin, and perhaps a pig for warmth its lumps pressing bruises. Straw pricking skin. Privacy? None. Bodily needs attended in the corner pot, emptied at dawn into the midden heap, where it stewed with ash. And kitchen slops, a fly-blown mound attracting rats bold as cats, odors layered, urine sharpness, fecal earthiness, unwashed bodies musk, all mingling in the unvented space. Somehow they slept, lulled by crackling fire and distant owl hoots. Dreams haunted by tomorrow's toil, winter amplified woes, frost-rimed walls inside, breath clouding, fingers numb as you poke embers. No insulation, winds whistled through chinks, snow drifting across the threshold. Chronicles like the Flores Historiarum record villages buried under drifts, folk huddling for body heat, sharing vermin in intimacy. You'd shiver through, modern expectations shattered by cold that seeped to marrow. This hearth, this haven of hardship, cradled lives of quiet endurance. But as night deepens, stars wheeling overhead, that leads us gently to the spectre of disease. That unseen reaper stalking every shadowed corner. Next, as embers glow faintly in the hearth, casting ruddy flickers on smoke-hazed walls. Consider the ever-present shadow of disease, that silent stalker weaving through medieval breath and bone. No antibiotics whisper promises of cure. Instead, humors clash in bodies untrained for invasion phlegm to cold, blood to hot, bile burning black. The air itself betrays you, thick with miasma from cesspits and slaughter yards, where physicians like Constantine the African in his 11th century translations from Arabic warned of corrupted airs, rising like ghosts from the earth. You'd cough first, a dry rasp from soot-laden lungs. Then fever creeps, skin hot and clammy under wool blankets stiff with sweat. Take the flux, dysentery's cruel grip, born from tainted wells where chamber pots emptied upstream. It strikes swift, belly cramps twisting like knotted ropes, diarrhea watery and bloody, leeching strength in endless rushes to the privy hole. In 1349, amid the Black Death's wake, chronicles by Henry Knighton describe villages where half the folk shut themselves to husks, skin slack over protruding bones. You'd clutch your middle, world spinning, while remedies brewed herb pastes of agrimony and tormentil boiled in ale, their bitter tang no match for the dehydration that hollowed cheeks and dimmed eyes. Plague wore many faces. The sweating sickness of 1485, sweeping Henry Tudor's England, brought fever that poured sweat like summer rain, soaking straw pallets, leaving survivors pale as parchment. No quarantine, the sick mingled with hail, flagellants whipping barebacks in streets. Believing self-blood appeased God's wrath, superstitions bloomed darkly. Touch a loved one's boober, swollen and black, and feel the pestilence leap like a flea from rat to man. Yersinia pestis, carried on those leaping vermin, nested in lymph nodes, bursting them purple before septicemia turned limbs gangrenous fingers blackening, toes sloughing off in the straw. Leprosy whispered slower doom, its numb patches spreading like frost on glass. Lepers rattled, clappers in towns, crying unclean, to clear paths, banished to laser houses, where they breathed through tubes of horn, lest their breath corrupt. The 12th century life of St. Hugh of Lincoln recounts nobles contracting it from alms kissing, their flesh peeling in layers, nerves dead to pain yet alive to isolation. You'd watch your fingers curl claw-like, smell the sweet rot of decay, knowing no cure beyond prayer to St. Lazarus. Childbed fever claimed mothers post-birth, uterine infections festering without silver nitrate washes ignores Semmelweis would champion centuries later. Midwives wiped hands on aprons crusted with old blood, chanting prayers over laboring women whose screams echoed through thin walls. Neonatal tetanus from unsterile blades severing cords, twisted tiny spines rigid. Mortality shadowed infancy. Half of children perished before 5. From Fruscia's white fungal shroud or summer diarrhea when milk soured in heat. Dentistry, agony's art. Tooth worms, they believed, burrowed ivory, drilled out by heated irons or pelican beak pliers. Barber surgeons yanked molars amid screams. No ether to dull the wrench. Abscesses swelled faces like moons. Pus bursting unbidden. You'd endure halitosis from rotting. Stumps, gums inflamed, every bite a gamble. Yet resilience flickered. Monasteries brewed herbal simples willow bark for pain. Like aspirin veiled in leaves, garlic poultices drawing boils. Pilgrims sought springs at Walsingham, water shimmering holy, bathing naked in muddied pools shared with the desperate. A tale from the Golden Legend by Jacobus de Voragine tells of Saint Odelia curing blindness with tears, inspiring folk to drip bile into eyes, risking worse. For you, one sneeze from a neighbor would unravel immune system adrift without vaccines. Body buckling under loads they shouldered lifelong. Night sweats chill you, paranoia blooming in the dark. But as fevered dreams fade with false dawn, that leads us gently to the healer's touch, where medicine danced on superstition's edge. Now, drift into the realm of medieval medicine, that blend of Galen's humours and folk whispers, where bloodletting cupped veins and leeches fattened on arms held over basins. Dawn light filters through horn-pane window panes, greasy and yellow, as the village-wise woman arrives, her skirts rustling dried herbs wormwood. Bethany, St. John's wort bundled at her belt. No stethoscope probes. She tastes your urine, sniffs its sharpness for diabetes, or peers at tongue's coating for imbalances. Too much black bile, she murmurs, prescribing purges of rhubarb root stewed bitter, bowels emptying in thunderous relief that weakens more than mends. Surgeons, often barbers with lancets stained brown, lanced boils or set bones with linen splints soaked in wine, trepanning bored skull holes to release evil spirits causing migraines. Bone dust flying as patients bit leather straps. The 13th century Trotula manuscript, attributed to a Salerno woman physician, advised vaginal fumigations of burnt toads for hysteria, fumes curling acrid through reed tubes. You'd inhale, eyes watering, womb supposedly soothed. Plague doctors, later in the 14th century, donned beaked masks stuffed with rose petals and vinegar against miasma. Glass eyes staring blankly, waxed robes rustling like ghosts. They poked buboes with sticks, lancing pus that sprayed foul. Then fled, herbs ruled, foxglove for heart flutters, digitalis hidden in leaves. Opium poppy latex dulled pain in laudanum draughts, dreamy haze veiling agony. Childbirth terrors yielded breech births yanked by hooks. All Caesareans fatal to mothers sans catgut sutures. Midwives massaged bellies with oils of lily, chanting Ave Marias. Yet hemorrhage claimed many, blood pooling dark on straw. For wounds, honey-sealed gashazits. Sugars antibacterial, unknown then mixed with vinegar, stinging fresh, superstitions laced cures. Unicorn horn narwhal tusk powdered against poison. Bez or stones from goat stomachs neutralized toxins. Infrasat's tails. Knights swallowed toadstones for battle protection. Gems glowing false in firelight. Somehow, trial lent credence. Survivors spread lore. Ignoring the dead, your modern faith in pills would shatter here purged hollow, leached pale. Faith tested by charlatanry. A single cut festers septic. Amputation by saw follows. Stump cauterized red hot. Screams echoing. Yet they lived, bodies tempered by ordeal. As poultices cool on skin. That leads us gently to the streets and markets, where commerce hummed amid peril. Next, as the healer's herbs fade from your nostrils, leaving a bitter aftertaste on the tongue, venture forth into the medieval streets and markets. where the pulse of trade beats slow and muddy underfoot. Dawn's light strengthens, gilding cobblestones slick with night dew, and morning slots tossed from upper windows cry of Gardyloo, echoing faintly in Scottish burghs, a warning to late for the unwary below. The lanes narrow, walls leaning close like conspirators, timber frames creaking overhead. Ready to shed mortar dust or worse, puddles reflect the sky, rainbow slick from dyers' vats upstream. Werewolf steeps in urine and woad, releasing ammonia clouds that sting eyes and throats alike. Markets unfold in the square, stalls of weathered planks under awnings of oiled cloth flapping gently. Fishwives hawk herring, silver-scaled and gutted on sight. Entrails flung to dogs that snarl amid legs. The reek assaults, salt cod fermenting. Cheeses wrapped in straw sweating way. Poultry squawking in wicker cages, feathers drifting like snow. Bread vendors cry wares from stone ovens. Loaves stamped with baker's marks to thwart short wait round wheaten for the rich. Squat rye for you, crust charred where flames kissed to hot. Touch the loaf wrong, and assizers with scales and knives descend, fining or pillorying the cheat. Haggling murmurs low, voice is blending with hammer clangs from smithies nearby, where forges glow cherry red, sparks ascending like fireflies reversed. The smith hammers plowshares, sweat beading on arms corded thick, anvil songs ringing steady. Nearby, tanners stretch hides in lime pits, barking agents turning stiff pelts supple. The stench of rot and dog dung used for softening wafting blocks away. You'd cover your nose with a sleeve stiff from your own unwashed days, but breath draws it deeper, coating lungs with invisible grit. Pickpockets weave silent through crowds, fingers light as spider silk dipping into pouches tied at belts. No constables patrol. Hue and cry raises villagers if theft spotted. Pursuit pounding through alleys till the miscreant dangled from a gibbet. Chroniclers like the 14th century Jean Devanet describe market day brawls, erupting over spilled measures, knives flashing quick, blood washing into gutters with the next rain. Superstition's guard wears, hagstones pierced flints hung from stall beams to snare evil eyes, or horseshoes nailed upward to trap luck. Town life amplified perils. In places like 13th century Paris, as noted by Guillaume de Nangis, narrow streets choked with refuse bred rats bold enough to nip heels, their plague fleas leaping unseen. Brothels lurked in side lanes, painted ladies calling softly from casements. Syphilis the great pox spreading via rough embraces, chonkers blooming like roses on genitals. Mercury ointments burning flesh in futile cure. You'd steer clear, but temptation whispered amid isolation. Currency clinked rarely. Barter ruled eggs for nails, cloth for salt. Money changers at tables counted silver pennies, clipped edges filed for profit, their scales tipping justice dubious. Fairs drew wider trade, wool from Cistercian monasteries, spices from Venetian galleys saffron threads worth gold. Cinnamon bark curled like secret spices soaring as merchants spun tales of Eastern wonders for you. The crush overwhelms, elbows jostling, shouts piercing the calm you've sought. Every step a slip in filth. Modern senses revolt at the press of unwashed bodies. Breaths sour with onions and ale. A single jostle, and purse gone, a bad bargain, and supper lost. yet markets sustained. Threads binding village to world, as stalls fold with afternoon slant, that leads us gently to the law's unyielding hand, where justice weighed heavy as iron shackles. Now, feel the shift as market din fades, giving way to the toll of the Lord's court or town reeve's bench, where disputes settled under oak boughs or in guild halls dim with rushlight. Dawn trials for petty thefts, a pilfered hen traced by footprints in mud, accused dragged forward by neighbors' oaths. No lawyers plead, the reeve, elected or appointed, weighs testimony on wooden scales of truth perjury sworn on Bible or relics. Saints invoked to strike liars dead, fines by deep, a shilling from a week's wage, or worse, the pillory. Picture it, stocks in the square, ankles and wrists locked in oak, head bowed through hole. Tomatoes splatter soft at first, then stones whistle, splitting lips, crows pecking at ears. The Anglo-Saxon Doom Book, echoed in later assizes, prescribed for theft the loss of hand or eye mutilation swift by headsmen with cleaver, stumps bound with pitch-heated rags, agony throbbing days. You'd scream, crowd murmuring approval, children aping decries, murder trials rarer, sent to kings justices itinerant. The 1215 Magna Carta curbed some abuses, but ere courts hang swiftly neck stretched on triple tree, body twisting slow in breeze, bowels drawn for treason, women ducked for scolding, strapped to stool, plunged into pond till bubbles ceased, lungs burning, emerging sputtering if deemed repentant, superstition's flavored verdicts, trial by ordeal hot iron grasped, hand bandaged 3 days. If pus clean, God cleared you. Water ordeal for witches. Bound, sunk in mirror floated, guilty, pulled for burning. Punishments lingered. Branding marked felons F on forehead for fox. Thieves brand smoking flesh. Runaways bore T on thumb. Chronicles by Roger of Wendover recount gibbets lining roads, crows feasting, a deterrent swaying in wind, prisons, dank holes under castles, straw deep in filth, manacles rusting wrists raw, bread and water till ransom or rot, manorial courts judged villeins, boon work shirked meant, whipping at cart's tail, lush curling air, welts rising red. Women burled the brank iron muzzle-gagging tongue for gossip, braided biting nettle. Somehow, order held, fear-forging compliance where kindness faltered. Your modern rights Miranda. Counsel vanish here. Accusation alone condemns. Innocence a whisper drowned in oaths, a neighbor's grudge, and your stock bound, pelted raw. Law's chill grip crushes spirits soft from centuries hence. But as sentences echo into dusk, that leads us gently to the blade and brawn of combat, where steel whispered death's lullaby. Next, as the echoes of the court's grim judgments fade into the lengthening shadows, turn your gaze to the clash of steel and the raw brawn of medieval combat, where men clad in sweat-soaked gambesons faced not glory, but the grind of survival's edge. No video games summon armor with a button. You'd fumble into a hauberk of riveted rings, each link cold and heavy, 40 pounds dragging shoulders down like an unrelenting shroud. Padding beneath quilted Acton stuffed with flock-matted damp, chafing skin raw where straps bit. Hell necks. Great bastinet muffling world to a slit-vision tunnel. Nasal bar pressing nose. cheek guards, trapping breath hot and stale. Training began young, boys swinging wooden wasters from dawn. Blunted swords bruising shins and ribs till bones toughened. Peasants drilled with billhooks and flails farm tools turned weapons. Against mounted knights whose destriers thundered, hooves churning mud to froth. The Battle of Agincourt, 1415, chronicled by Jean D. Waverin, saw French chivalry bogged in clay. English longbowmen loosing goose-feathered shafts at 60 paces, arrows whizzing like vengeful wasps, punching mail to splinter bone beneath. You'd not sure you bow. Arms quivering from unaccustomed draw 120 pounds pull splintering calluses fresh loosing wild. Shaft burying harmless in turf. Melee descended then, chaos of shoved shields and thrusting swords. Broadswords hacked overhead. Edges nicking helms with sparks. Daggers sought gaps under arms, sinking to hilts in meaty yields. Blood-slicked grips, visions swam from blows glancing skulls, concussions blooming unseen. Wounds festered swift, gashes sown with hog bristle, packed with moss or honey. Yet gangrene crept green-black, demanding saw or knife for amputation midfield. Screams lost in fray for peasants. Skirmishes rarer, but no less dire village levies mustered by horn blast. Scythes sharp and keen, marching to repel Scots raiders or hold bridges. The 1381 peasants' revolt saw Wat Tyler's men wielding goads against plate-armored retainers, clubs shattering kneecaps, yet bolts from arbalests pierced chests, lungs flooding red. You'd charge, heart-pounding terror, urine warmed down legs, only to fall pierced, earth cool on cheek as life ebbed. Women faced shadows too, rape-shadowed invasions, as lamentations of Matthiolus decried. Invaders dragging maids to barns, straw-rasping backs amid cries. Castles sieged starved folk within. Catapults hurling dung-mixed stones over walls. Disease from unburied dead wafting inward. Sappers, tunneled beneath, mines collapsing in thunder. Dust choking screams. Superstition's armored mines. Relics sewn into circuits St. George's finger bone for valor. Charms of vervain against blade bite. Knights kissed crucifix pommels pre-charge. Murmuring paternosters, believing divine favor turned lances aside. Somehow, faith steels sinews where skill faltered. Your untrained frame crumples first strike ribs cracking like dry twigs. Breath stolen. Panic flooding as comrades trample past. No respawn. One clash ends you. Body stripped for spoils. Bones whitening on moors. But as battle cries hush, to raven cause, that leads us gently to the table's meager bounty, where feasting masked famines bite. Now, linger over the Lord's table or village hall's long board, where evening candles sputter wax tears, illuminating platters heaped for the few while you eye scraps from floor. Nobles reclined on cushioned benches, trenchers of stale Monchet bread soaking juices from roasted swan or peacock, feathers replumed for show, flesh gamey under spiced mask, venison haunch carved with silver knives, blood pooling ruby, followed by subtleties marzipan castles sculpted fine, sugar paste gleaming like frost. For you, high table distant dream, villain fare echoed fields, peas pottage laced with eel if lucky, heads bobbing eyeless, fish, days Fridays holy meant stockfish boiled salt tough, teeth grinding fibers endless, cheese wheels, Use milk pressed hard, rind scraped mold away, core sharp as regret. Ale or mead washed down, small beer cloudy from hasty ferment, or hypercras spiced with ginger from Geno's traders. Cloves pricking tongue sweet, banquets stretched hours, minstrels plucked lutes softly, VL's wailing melancholy airs of lost crusades, jousts of spoons clashed in riddles, losers drinking wassailed bowls brimming Hippocras. Gluttony tempted ruin, Henry I's lamprey surfeit, as Audric Vitalis wrote, bloated belly to burst, deaf from overic by, peasant weddings or wakes offered rare revel, barn dances to pipe and tabor stamping earth dusty, sweat mingling merry, pies of pigeon or pork, pastry flaky with suit, shared knife to mouth, superstition's blessed boards, first bite to house elves, lest milk soured, bridal cake crumbled for fertility charms, buried under threshold, yet famine stalked always. The great famine 1315 to 17, per annals Polini, drove cannibalism whispers dead eaten in huts, survivors mad-eyed. You'd no roots boiled bitter, acorn bread binding guts to stone, bellies distended yet empty, scurvy bled gums raw, teeth loosening in sockets, your palate weaned on supermarkets, requisite textures coarse, flavors muddled earth, one surfeit of saltfish and flux grips, underft, strength ebbs, feasts taunt, revealing hierarchies chasm, as platters clear to dawn's hush, that leads us gently to the weave of daily crafts, where hands shaped fragile lifelines from wool and wood.